Greetings and welcome to the channel. I wanted to learn a little more about what middle class means, since it seems it should be objective and based on numbers, but it always sounds subjective since I hear things on the news like, in the latest survey, people asked if they felt like they were middle class. I feel like I'm middle class, but am I based on the numbers? If there are indeed numbers? The US government doesn't have a monetary definition of middle class, but I did find this 2010 report from the Department of Commerce, Economics, and Statistics Administration. According to the report, most Americans consider themselves middle class. This raises the question, what does it mean to be middle class? Middle class families are defined by their aspirations more than their income. We assume that middle class families aspire to home ownership, a car, college education for their children, health and retirement security, and occasional family vacations. I tend to agree with this report. Again, the government doesn't have a specific definition or a monetary definition, and it depends. Many people feel different ways about whether or not they're middle class, and we'll get into some of that here in just a minute. There is a more objective measurement that is widely used, and that is the Pew Research definition of 2/3 to 2 times the median household income. This can vary quite a bit based on location and household size. It would be difficult to incorporate net worth, home ownership, health, and other factors into a definition of middle class. A great article using the Pew method is this one from Smart Asset by Jacqueline DeJohn. Some interesting things from this article. First, in a large U.S. city, a middle class income averages between $52,000 and $155,000. The median household income across all 345 cities is $77,345, making middle class income limits fall between $51,558 and $154,590. You could be making over $300,000 and still be middle class in 6 U.S. cities. Mississippi has the lowest earning middle class at the state level. Mississippi residents making between $35,000 and $105,000 would be considered middle class. Keep in mind, these are numbers from 2023. This article is from April of 2024, so they had the 2023 numbers. It continues on, listing cities. It shows the highest. You can actually look for more than this in this article, but it shows the states, where they range. You can go page to page on the states. See, New Jersey is number 1, Maryland number 2, and it shows you the lower bound, the upper bound, and then the median household income. The median income is they receive from the government and like from census information. And then you can multiply it by 2 to get the upper limit, and then divide by 3, and that'll give you the lower limit. So for each state, obviously it depends on where you live. You notice New Jersey, the median is 96,000, all the way down to Mississippi, where the median is only 52,000. Let's say you live in a more rural area, not well represented by this article. You can find your county's median income on the U.S. Census site. Keep in mind, these are 2023 numbers. For example, Morgan County, West Virginia, has a median income of $63,805. We can multiply that median income by 2 to find the upper limit of $127,610, then divide by 3 to find the lower limit of $42,537. I don't live in West Virginia anymore, but I'm in a similar county in a different state now, and my state, I'd fall well below, and county, even the county that I live in, I fall well below the lower limit. I even fall below the lower limit for Mississippi. But again, I would say I feel middle class. So does this number really mean a whole lot? By both the subjective and objective Pew measures, about 50% of households fall into middle class. It's not necessarily the same people. I'm sure there are households earning over $500,000 a year. I see articles occasionally saying $500,000 a year couple says they're middle class or low income or something like that. Clearly, it's based on what city they're in. But even at $500,000 a year, according to the Pew numbers, they don't technically fall into middle class. But if they're in a very high cost of living city where 300,000 is the upper limit, for example, they may feel like they're middle class. It is a feeling. There are people earning $100,000 a year, which is middle class pretty much everywhere, that feel like they're low income. Not lower class, they're low income. And then there are people like me, for example, who don't even meet the minimum requirement for being middle class, but feel middle class, whether it's because of, home ownership, health, stability, and, and what income you do have, your expenses, how much interest you're paying, how much taxes you're paying. There are a lot of things that can factor into how you feel middle class without falling into an objective measure of what middle class is. While I was researching this, I thought I would also check to see if a couple, each receiving the average monthly Social Security benefit, would be considered middle class. In 2023, the average benefit was about $1,788 a month. This would be $42,912 annually for a couple, which would reach the minimum threshold in only 9 states, according to the Pew definition of middle class. In most locations, household earnings would need to average near the top of the middle income range to receive a Social Security benefit that even has a chance of being near the bottom of the range. Especially, I've got multiple videos going over how Social Security works and, how it's a regressive system where the more income you make, the less that impacts your Social Security payment. The first average $1,000 a month, and maybe it's $1,100 right now. You basically will get about 90% of that back in Social Security, but then it's only 32% above that, and then 15% even further above that. So your first $1,000 a month is the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to a return on Social Security, if you want to call it a return on Social Security. When it comes down to it, feeling middle class is more important than being in a certain income range. Families across the income spectrum often report themselves as middle class. This suggests that most American families share the desire for economic stability and a better life for their children. Income may not be the primary determinant of whether a family considers itself middle class, although income will shape and constrain choices. I prefer numbers, but there are so many variables as to what is middle class. I now know the question is more often, do you feel middle class? I know why that is the question now, because ultimately that's probably more important. And if you could get in and analyze by the numbers and put every little variable in, you could probably come up with some kind of decent estimation of what middle class in America is. But I don't think it's that important. To have some basic guidelines on income and being able to determine, even county by county or city by city, what the middle class income range is an interesting idea, but not ultimately that important. As always, if you have comments or questions, please leave those below. And remember, if you're going to retire to something.